Hello and welcome to our Learn Python series. Today we are going to talk about Python classes, how do we define them, how do we use them, and then we will look at some quick examples of these classes creation and usage. Let's do it. Oh class, who art thou? Let's answer this question that what's a Python class? Why do we need them? How do we create and how do we use them? You go to school and then you ask somebody, okay, who's that person who's standing over there? And the other person says, that's a student, that's a teacher, or that's a some administrative staff. Now listen to this answer. That person has classified that person's identity based on some attributes, some activities that person performs, or some kind of rules that define that person. Now, that is what a class is. It's an object that has some properties. It has some activities that it performs. So in Python, you define a class by using the keyword class, and then you give it a meaningful name. Now we're going to take example of a student. And that is just a basic definition of how the class will look like in Python. Now, when the student is admitted into a school, you just don't simply say student. When you go to the office, they will say, can I have your name and a date of birth? So that means you have to provide some initial information. In Python, that is called class initialization. It is done by using a special function called underscore underscore init underscore underscore. And this is how you define. And we say since a student cannot be admitted without providing some basic information, and that is initialization, where you're providing first name, last name, date of birth. Now you are wondering, what is the self? Think about it. When you answer a question about yourself, you say my name is this, my age is this. But when you're answering a question about somebody else, you say that person's name is this, that person's age is that. So in Python, self is like saying me or myself. And when I want to store the information about myself, that is where the information is stored. Now that we have defined, so we have to store the first name that we provided as the argument to our initialization. And that is, now you can see that this is a very basic definition, or how do we create a basic class and initialization. Now you're asking question that, do I have to provide initial information for every class that I define? The answer is no. It will depend on the class and the information that that class needs to get initialized. There will be a lot of classes that don't need it, and we will see them in a little bit. Now that we have it, now you're saying, how do I create this class? You create an instance of this class by, this is how it looks like. We create a class variable called John, and we said it's a student. Notice that I did not provide any initial information, and let's try to run it. And you see we got an error. It says missing arguments. That means now Python is waiting, is saying is that you told me that to initialize a student, I need information, but you did not provide me, so provide me some. So you provide information, and now we will provide date of birth as a string, which is in year, month, day form. And now let's try to run it. And now you can see everything looks great. And how do we access this information that is now stored inside in the attributes, or in Python, the properties? So you use a dot notation where you say, we say print, and we say John dot first name dot last name and dot date of birth. And that is how you access the information. So now you see we printed it. Next is that, let's say John changes his name, or say, though this name is not correct, my name is Johnny. And how do you change the information that is already stored in a class? You say my first name is Johnny, and let's see that now you can see that the name has changed to Johnny. All right, so far so good. Other thing we said that the class may have some activities that it performs, or it has some behavior. Now think about that. Somebody asks you a question, what is your age? Same way, the student, somebody can say, ask, what is the student's age? Now when you answer the question about your age, how do you do it? You say, okay, today's day is this, my date of birth is this, and that's my age. So same way, we will add a activity or a behavior, and we will say get age, And now it is a the date of birth is a date time object, but we pass it as a string object. So how do we modify this? So now we're going to use our date time library, which we're going to import. And one additional thing we're going to do is during initialization, we're going to store our date of birth not as a string, but we are going to convert that using strptime function. And now our date of birth is stored as a date time object. Now when we say get age, how do you do it? You say, think about it, same way you did the math in your head about your age, same we're gonna do it. Now you can see how we computed and we return the age. Now you can, this is a very basic class which has initialization, and then it has age as an activity or action that it can provide or answer it can give. And now we saw how we access the information of the class and how we change it. Now let's talk about the class that does not have initialization. Think about a classroom. When a class, when you look at a building, somebody can say, even less, if let's say that this classroom has not been assigned to any subject yet, it's a class which may have name at some point and it may have students at some point. That means I really don't need any kind of information to get started with a class called classroom. And let's add that. So here is a class called classroom. You can see that in the initialization, no information has been provided, and we said that the name is empty and the student list is empty also. Then we added a method called add student. One additional thing we did, we added a rule that says if student is less than 18 years old, we will not admit it, and we raise an error. We will discuss about this exception and the value errors in a lesson where we will talk about error handling. But for now, you can see that we added a student. And how does this work? Let's add one more student to our usage. Now we added Mary in there. And how are we going to use our classroom class? And this is how you use our classroom class. Now you can see that we created a classroom, and notice we did not provide any initial information, but then later on we changed the name from empty to math class, and then we use the function add student. And that is all you will need to create a basic class and add some function to it. In subsequent chapters, we will say more about these classes, and eventually we will convert our data analysis program to use classes. Thanks for learning with us. Do subscribe and like our channel. For more information, do visit our website. Till next lesson, take care. Goodbye.